muna. And I hope you're in good position ngayon na. Kasi um, tapos na yung lockdown. Hindi, may lockdown pa rin. Level 4 nga lang. Okay. So, if you are vaccinated, then you have more perks than those who are not fully vaccinated. Okay. So, that's why ako nakapagpagupit na. Anyway, so I guess we can start na. Okay. So, for this chapter, we will talk about chemical reactions, and this will be paired with your laboratory discussion on balancing chemical equation and stoichiometry. Okay? So, medyo related sila. However, for the lecture, we will cover the reactions muna. Okay? So, we'll cover chemical reactions. Okay? So, this is a two-part discussion. So, yung first part, discuss natin today. The next part will be done next week. Okay? So, yan. So, let's talk about the objectives of this lesson. So, our objectives by the end of this chapter discussion is that you will know the types of chemical reactions there are around us, and then eventually, sana matutunan nyo how to balance redox reaction. Okay? So, redox reactions are very important types of reactions which will be discussed in depth in your analytical chem. Okay? So, kumbaga, this is a preparation for your subject next semester. Okay? So, ngayon pa lang, magkakaroon na tayo ng idea on what redox reactions are. Okay? So, let's have a short review. Okay? Let's short review lang tayo on the types of changes our matter can undergo. In our previous discussion, especially in chapter 2, we learned that our matter can undergo two types of changes: physical change and chemical change, di ba? So when you say physical change, ano meron dito? The phase of matter changes lang, okay? Yung itsura niya nagbabago, okay? For example, water. You put your water into the freezer, it turns into solid. So it just changed its appearance. Pero the chemical composition is still the same all throughout, okay? So as long as the chemical composition remains the same, therefore your matter just underwent physical change. However, if yung matter mo, it started changing its chemical formula, pag nagbago siya ng kanyang identity, then that is your chemical reaction or chemical change. Okay? And chemical changes are usually accompanied by chemical equations. Okay? So, yung balancing ng chemical equation, i-discuss sa laboratory. For the lecture, ito yung i-discuss natin. What are the types of chemical changes or chemical reactions? Okay? So, yan. So, it means na hindi natin kailangan i-balance yung mga equation for now. Okay? So, sige. Let us proceed. So, in your high school, okay, you already encountered these four types of chemical reaction, diba? So, you have the synthesis, decomposition, single displacement, double displacement. Okay? And I know everyone is very familiar with this. Okay? Especially mga non-STEM kasi ito yung tinuturo sa inyo, diba? Okay? So, what happens in synthesis ba? Okay? Let's just recall. Okay? In the synthesis reaction, basically, you have two or more reactants combining to form one na nga, single pa, product. So, yan. So, yung reactants mo, magsasama sila in order to form your product. Okay? So, here are some examples. Sulfur combined with oxygen in the air to form sulfur dioxide. Magnesium can react with oxygen in the air to produce magnesium oxide. Okay? So, mapapansin nyo that yung number ng chemical formulas natin before ay marami. So, in our case, dalawa. Ito pati ito. Ito pati ito. But, in the product side, all of them just combine to form a covalent molecule or ionic compound. Okay? So, this one is covalent. This one is ionic. Okay? So, yun. Ganun yung ating synthesis reaction. Okay? Very easy. Okay? Next one, decomposition. Pag decomposition naman, you have a single reactant. And that reactant decomposes into multiple products. Okay? So, isa yung reactant. Pagdating sa product, they are marami sila. Okay? So, kailan nangyayari yung decomposition reaction? Okay. So, decomposition reactions happen when you apply electricity to your species or you heat them. Okay? So, for example, yung tubig, pag kinuryente mo yan, okay, in the presence of electricity, they actually split into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay? That's why kapag kinuryente yung tubig, bumubula. Okay? That bubbles are actually composed of hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay? So those are explosive gases. So you don't want to electrolyze your water. Okay? And delikado yung tubig na nalagyan ng kuryente kasi those products are volatile, they can explode. Okay, so yan. Sometimes we can do it by heating. Okay, so for example, we have potassium chlorate. This is an ionic compound. However, when you heat this, they decompose into two parts. Okay, you have your potassium chloride and your oxygen gas. Okay, so the oxygen gas came from the oxygens in the chlorate ions. Okay, so yan. So that's thermal decomposition. Okay. So again, the idea is that for decomposition, it will happen when you apply electricity to your reactants or you heat them. Okay. So yan. So that's the decomposition reaction. You have one reactant and then you will have multiple products. Single displacement naman, so alam nyo to nung high school, ito yung switching partners because it is, no? So basically, in the single displacement reaction, your anion just changes its cation, okay? So let's have this thing here na. So we have the nitrate, which is paired with silver. Then pagdating sa product, kanino na siya naka-pair? Kay zinc, okay? Bakit kaya nangyari yon, no? So, ano yan, malalaman nyo yan sa analytical chem. Okay? So, yeah. But for now, we just know that in single displacement, our anion switches cation. Okay? So, kanina, Ag siya. On the product side, it is now zinc. Okay? So, ganun din dito sa baba. Our Cl, our anion, ang original partner niya is hydrogen, but after the reaction, the partner of chlorine is now magnesium. Okay? So, yun. So, again, the idea is that the anion changes its cation pair. Okay? So, ayun. And then lastly, we have the double displacement reaction wherein the cations and the anions completely switches its pair. Okay? For example, we have here sodium sulfide and hydrochloric acid. Pansin nyo, the sodium and chlorine combined, and then yung hydrogen and sulfur, they also combine to form hydrosulfuric acid, okay? Or dihydrogen sulfide, okay? So, yan. Nagsiswitch sila ng partner completely, okay? So, let's take a look at this one, barium, pati sulfate, sodium, pati Cl, okay? So, that's the double displacement reaction. Okay, so this is very high school, no? So, siguro isipin nyo, ay, tapos na si sir. No, okay, because di tayo papayag na ganun lang, okay? Because we are already in college. That means, we need much more details on the type of chemical reaction. Because, probably in your high school, ang binibigay sa inyo ay kompleto na yung reactants and products, right? But in college, hindi ganun, okay? You will be asked to determine what are the products, okay? Will the products form? Ano yung uri ng products mo, okay? So, ganun level yung college. So, basically, ginawa lang natin this time, binalikan lang natin tong basics ng high school, but going to use them. Okay? Because in college, ito yung uri ng chemical reactions. More specific types of chemical reactions are the combustion reactions and reactions in aqueous solutions such as precipitation, acid-base, and redox reaction. Okay? So again, etong mga to, high school yan. Okay? So okay lang kung alam nyo yan, kabisadong-kabisado nyo yan. Of course, kabisado natin lahat yan. But, remember, we are now in college, so that means we have to level up our understanding. Okay? So, these are the more specific types of chemical reaction, and I will discuss until this part today. So, I will try to cover everything until this kasi this one is a very long topic. That's why ito yung next meeting na lang. Okay? But this thing here, this is kaya yan today. Okay? So now, again, just to brief you, no, itong ating i-discuss ay probably hindi na-cover in your high school. Okay? So yeah, probably dito naturo. So that's why you really have to pay attention, and then if you have some concerns, just let me know. Okay? So yun. So this will be quite hard for some, but I hope by the end of the discussion, you will be given clarity na sa mga katanungan sa isip. Okay? So just let me know if you have concerns because this will be quite hard topic to discuss. Okay, so sige. Let's begin with the combustion reaction. So what are combustion reactions? Basically, your combustion reactions are the reactions of your organic molecule with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so ito yung nangyayari when our fuel gets burned sa kalan or sa sasakyan. Okay, even in our body, okay, our body also do combustion reaction but on a different mechanism nga lang. Okay, so kunwari you're eating food right now. Okay, the food is composed of organic molecules, di ba? And that organic molecules in your food can be combusted in the body via metabolic processes. Okay, yun yung mga glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. Okay, but let's talk about hindi body muna, okay? So let's talk about the generic combustion reaction. So again, combustion reaction occurs when you have an organic compound burns in air to produce water and carbon dioxide. And this reaction usually go into completion, okay? So this is the general format, okay? And you have to remember this. Whenever you have combustion reaction, you have your CHO. This CHO here gives you an idea on what is your organic compound, okay? So this gives you an idea ano yung organic compound ka. And then everything else on the right side will just be copied, okay? Ayan, oxygen, CO2, H2O, okay? So everything on the right ay as is yan. However, itong organic molecule mo, ito yung pwede magbago-bago. Okay? So, pwede siyang C3H8, pwedeng CH4, pwedeng C2H6. Okay? So, any combinations yan. Okay? C6H12O6, pwede. Basta the idea is that for combustion reaction, when it is complete, it follows this format. Okay? So, you have your organic molecule here, oxygen here, and you produce carbon dioxide and water. So, ganun palati ang format. Okay? However, siguro you might be thinking, no, Sir, kung yung combustion reaction natin will produce carbon dioxide and water, bakit yung ilalim ng kalan maitim? That is a valid question. Eh, baka kasi isipin nyo na ba yan? Tinanong na naman ni Sir sarili niya. Hindi. That is a valid question. Diba? When you cook something no, in your stove, okay, in your range, ano nangyayari? Sometimes, you observe that there are black stuff, no, na dumidikit sa ilalim ng kalan, okay? Ay, sa ilalim ng ng lutuan, okay? So, lalo na sa bahay, pag may takore, nilagay mo doon sa sa apoy, nangingitim 'yan. Eh 'di ba dapat walang ganun. Kasi, look at the products, it should be carbon dioxide and water, di ba? Why is it na nangingitim siya? Okay? So, the answer to that is that the reaction is incomplete kasi. Okay? What happens when the reaction is not complete is that other products can also be formed, no? We can have the toxic carbon monoxide, okay? We can have the toxic carbon monoxide, or pwede rin naman tayo mag-form ng soot, okay? Ano yung soot? Yun yung kulay itim. Okay? Yun yung kulay itim sa ating mga lutuan. Okay? So, to give you an idea, ano yung tsura niyan? Pakita ko. Soot in cookware. Ito yon. 'Di ba pag nagluto kayo, lalo na kung ano, ganyan talaga yung apoy, mapapansin nyo, nangingitim yung ilalim. Okay? Yan. So, ang hirap linisin yan, di ba? Okay. So, why do we form soot? Okay. The reason why we form soot is that the reaction is not complete. The combustion is not complete. Okay. Even sa jeepney, may ganyan, no? So, kapag sumakay kayo ng jeepney, sobrang itim ng usok, no? Yun, incomplete combustion yun. Yung itim na yon sa usok na yon, those are carbon atoms. No? Soot yun. Okay? Ayan. So, ibig sabihin, pag na-inhale mo yun, basically, you have a soot dito sa lalamunan mo, sa iyong baga. Ano? So, yeah, that's very dangerous actually. Okay? So, bakit nagiging incomplete yung combustion? Paano nagiging incomplete? Okay? So, combustion reactions can be incomplete if there is not enough oxygen around your reacting species. Okay? Paano nawawala ng oxygen sa lutuan? Kasi remember, yung ating apoy, kapag wala itong lutuan natin, the oxygen can penetrate the fire in many possible ways. No? Pwede dito sa gilid, pwede dito sa taas. No? So the oxygen can access the burning molecules there. Okay? However, when you place your cookware dito sa ibabaw ng apoy, you are restricting the amount of oxygen that enters the flame, okay? So, nababawasan yung oxygen na nakakapasok kasi may nakaharang na lutuan, okay? And if that happens, since kulang yung oxygen, what will you form? Soot, okay? Yun yung kulay itim, okay? So, ganun yung idea. Sometimes, the flame is not too high, no? I mean, yung temperature niya, hindi ganun kataas. That's why hindi complete yung combustion. Okay? For for the combustion reaction to occur completely, it usually needs a very high temperature, mga 400, 500 degrees Celsius. Okay? However, kapag mahina yung apoy, for example in kandila, okay? So kapag kandila 'yan, 'di ba maglagay ka ng baso sa ilalim, magiging itim yung baso, 'di ba? Yung ilalim ng baso. Because the heat of the flame is not too intense to completely combust the carbons in the wax. Okay? So that's why may itim sa candle. Okay? So candle soot. Okay? So yun, ayan na. Okay? So alam ko familiar kayo dyan, right? So that explains bakit may ganon sa ating mga sinusunog sa bahay. Okay? Sa mga kandila, in our cookwares, no? So that is the reason why black materials occur, no? When you combust these things, okay? So ayan ay vapor ng molecules lang, okay? So yung itim na yan, ano ulit tawag doon? Soot, okay? SOOT, that is elemental carbon. Okay, so yan. So, ayan. So, yun yung soot na. Yun yung kulay itim sa lating lutuan. How about the carbon monoxide? Why is it toxic? Okay, so carbon monoxide is a byproduct of incomplete combustion, which is toxic in such way that ganito kasi. The Lewis structure of carbon monoxide is this. Teka lang. So, this is 8, 16, Available 4 plus 6, 10. There should be 3 ponds. Okay. Ayan. So, this is the carbon monoxide. This is the oxygen gas. What can you observe dito? Okay. So, napapansin mo that oxygen gas somehow resembles carbon monoxide structure. It is linear. Okay. Dalawa yung atom. So, ibig sabihin, it can compete with the oxygen, no, when it attaches to the hemoglobin of our blood. Okay. So, di ba yung ating dugo, it can carry oxygen gas. However, ano yung however natin? Look at the carbon monoxide. It resembles oxygen gas. Parehas na parehas, di ba? So, what will happen? What will happen is that this molecule here, no, can actually compete with this. Ano mangyayari? When a person inhales carbon monoxide, yung binding ng carbon monoxide is very strong in such way na people can die of hypoxia. Okay? Hypoxia. Hypoxia. Okay? So, kailangan alam nyo to kasi mga doctors kayo in the future. Kaya sinashare ka. So, people die of hypoxia due to carbon monoxide poisoning. Okay? You cannot smell this. Walang amoy yan. Mapapansin mo na lang yan kapag nanghina ka na. Okay? So, yun. So, if you faint, that means possible na you are intoxicated by carbon monoxide. Okay? So, yun yung idea. Okay? And sadly, sa sad part ng history natin, sorry, lagpas ako ng octet rule. Sorry for that. Ayan. So, just a short history lesson lang. Okay? So, ito yung ginamit ng Nazis, no? In exterminating Jews, no? So that is a very bad thing to do. Okay, that is inhumane. Okay, and of course everyone hates that, no? Even Germans hate it, no? That they have that history, no? Pero we have to learn from it, no? So yan, ito yung ginagamit ng mga Nazi that time in order to kill Jewish people. Okay. So yun, ang worst na nabasa kong documentary, mga napanood kong docu, nabasa kong mga libro, okay, sabi nila dun, dinescribe nila yung process na minsan daw sasakyan na mismo yung dinadala, tapos papaanda rin nila yung sasakyan, then due to the carbon monoxide in the cars, ayun, people die. Okay, so that's a very sad part of history. But again, we have to learn from history and we should not allow that to happen again. Okay, so yan. So ito yung chemistry side, why people died that time. Okay, so the carbon monoxide competed with oxygen. That's why the cells die of hypoxia. Okay, so ano yung mga ginawa ng car companies in order to prevent that from happening again? Okay, so the car companies actually attach a vital component in your vehicle, okay, which is called the catalytic converter. Alam niyo yan sa sasakyan, 'di ba, sa tambucho may box doon, then tuloy-tuloy uli yan. Okay, so that box there is the catalytic converter. Okay, so what's the purpose of catalytic converter? To fully oxidize the carbon monoxide. Kapag pumasok yung carbon monoxide dyan, lalabas yun as carbon dioxide. Okay? Carbon dioxide is less toxic than carbon monoxide. Okay? So according to the binding properties of these molecules to hemoglobin. Okay? So lesser yung lesser yung toxicity neto kaysa dito sa carbon monoxide. Okay? Although we know that carbon dioxide is a primary source of our greenhouse gases, no? Okay, so isa ito sa mga nag-spike sa mga greenhouse gases as we entered the industrial age, no? However, the idea here is this one is less toxic than this. Okay, so although medyo bad to for the environment, at least people will not die the people will not die ASAP, no, when they inhale CO2. Okay, medyo matagal pa bago ka ma-hypoxia. So that means, if ikaw na-stuck ka sa car mo, you still have enough time, no, to break the glasses, no, before you pass out. Okay? So yun. Kasi kapag carbon monoxide yan, tas nalock ka sa sasakyan, tas pumasok yung carbon monoxide sa'yo, you will pass out agad-agad. Okay? And if you are not recovered ASAP, you may die. Okay? So that's the idea. That's why we have catalytic converters in the cars. Okay? Yung mga lumang car, they don't have catalytic converter. That's why yung kanilang combustion ay incomplete na. Ikita mo, sobrang itim ng usok. Okay? Sometimes nakakahilo. Pag nahilo ka, that is actually one of the signs of carbon monoxide entering your body. Okay? Ako na-observe ko yan kasi ako ay commuter, especially during face-to-face classes. Okay? So from Valenzuela to Manila, na ilang kilometers yan? 16 kilometers. Okay, so yan. And during my commute, nakikita ko yung chemistry in real life. Okay? Pag nahihilo na ako, lumalayo ako sa Tambotsyo. Tapos, hinga-hinga. Ayan. Okay. Pag nahilo ka na talaga, umuwi ka na. Okay, so ganun. Okay? So, yan lang ha. So, again, nag-segue na ako. But at least you know the context of these molecules na. Kasi chemistry is not just not just memorization lang. You can apply this in real life, no. Okay? So, ito na-apply natin sa medicine. Yung suit na-apply natin kung bakit nangingitim yung ating niluluto sa bahay, di ba? Okay. So, yan. At least you know the chemistry behind those things. Okay? So yan, so again, for combustion reaction, if it is complete, it will produce carbon dioxide and water. If it is incomplete, it can produce soot or carbon monoxide. Okay? So yan. So, pag nagsunog ka ng papel, di ba nangingitim yung papel? Yung itim na yon, soot yon. Okay? So yan, soot. So ibig sabihin, yes, you can form multiple products. Pwedeng may ma-form ka na soot, pwedeng may ma-form ka na carbon dioxide, and pwedeng may ma-form ka na carbon monoxide. That's why, kapag nasusunog yung bahay, let's say, kunwari, wag naman sana, condo, nasunog, di ba may mga carbon monoxide detector sa condo? Kasi, yung carbon dioxide, okay pa no? You have plenty of time to escape the room if puro carbon dioxide. Pero kapag carbon monoxide, ito dangerous talaga to. So that's why yung ating mga condominiums now, they are equipped with carbon monoxide detectors because kapag yan nag-beep, it means you have to get out of your unit agad-agad. Okay? Otherwise, you may pass out. Okay? Kasi hindi mo nakikita yan eh. You really have to get out once the alarm sets off. Okay? So, yan yung chemistry behind all those things that are happening around us. Okay? So, I hope you can apply that and teach it to your colleagues sa bahay, mga friends, families. Okay? So, ano kaya yung pwede kong tip na pwede maibigay sa inyo to prevent the soot formation in your cookware? Taasan nyo yung temperature. Lakasan nyo yung apoy. Pag malakas yung apoy, mataas yung temperature, that means the carbons can be fully oxidized to carbon dioxide. Okay? So, kaya kapag mainit masyado yung niluluto, wala masyadong itim. Pero kapag low fire yan, ayun, sandamukal yung kulay itim sa lutuan. Okay? So, you know what to do. Okay? So, yun yung first type of reaction that we have to know. The combustion reaction. Next type of reaction, they actually fall into this category, reactions in aqueous solution. Okay? So, ano meron dito? So, ibig sabihin, nasa tubig sila. Okay? Aqueous solution, when they say aqueous solution, these are ions in liquids. Okay? These are molecules in liquids. Okay? So, yan. You can see if it is aqueous if ang iyong compounds may AQ na nakakabit. Okay? That AQ means aqueous. Okay? Some people read this as aqueous, no? But we read it as aqueous. Okay? Ano meaning uli ng aqueous? Your molecules, no, are dissolved in water. Okay? Nasa tubig sila. Okay? So what happens to our ionic compounds when we put them in water? Ano ba nangyayari sa ionic compound pag nilagay sa tubig? They dissociate. Okay? And that is very evident when you put your asin sa tubig, di ba? Kunwari, you are going to make your improvised gargle. Okay? So, yun. Yung asin, lagay mo sa tubig, matutunaw. Why? Because apparently, sabi dito sa slide natin na to, our ionic compounds, they separate into ions when placed in water. Tawag doon ay ionization process or dissociation process. Okay? So, yun, solid NaCl natin, pag nilagay mo sa tubig, they turn into ions. Okay? How that happens ba? Okay, ganito kasi, yung ating water molecules, they can actually trap individual ions. For this picture here, na-trap niya yung sodium. For this picture here, na-trap niya yung chlorine. Okay? Yun yung nangyayari. Bakit natutunaw yung asin sa tubig. Okay? So, eto ngayon. So, since we're talking about reactions in aqueous solution, why is it that not all reactions happen when you mix liquids? Okay? Kunwari, pag haluin mo yung alcohol pati suka, may mangyayari ba? Wala. Pag haluin mo yung suka pati toyo, may mangyayari ba? Wala naman. Masarap lang siyang sawsawan. Okay. But the idea is that when you mix aqueous solutions, there are times that they will not form products. No? Walang reaction. Ganun yung nangyayari minsan. Pag haluin mo yung tubig na may asin sa sa suka, may mangyayari ba? Wala. Okay? Wala naman sumasabog, wala naman nagbabago ng kulay, di ba? So, ibig sabihin no, that not all liquids, no, not all aqueous solution, when you combine them, hindi lahat magre-react. Okay? So, this is the question ngayon. Paano mo malalaman if a reaction will occur? Okay? Ito na yung sinasabi ko, di ba? In college, you will not be given the products because you are going to determine them. Okay? Ikaw mismo yung mag-aalam kung ano yung products na mabubuo mo. Okay? So, how will we know if a reaction can occur? Paano natin malalaman if may reaction na mangyayari? So, it has to follow one of these three criteria. Okay? So, una, there should be ions that can combine to form insoluble substances called precipitates. Okay? We call that the precipitation reaction. If you have ions that when you combine them, they form insoluble product. Okay? So another instance kung kailan magkakaroon ng reaction is that when you have ions that can neutralize each other. Okay? That is called an acid-base reaction. And then lastly, if you have ionic species that can transfer electron, we call that the redox reaction. Okay? So we will discuss this in depth later and then next week. Okay? Ito, we will try to cover these two parts and then this is a very lengthy topic kaya next week yan. Okay? So, again, not all liquids, no, when you combine them, not all of them will react. Okay? Hindi lahat. Example, tubig pati toyo, walang nangyayari. Tumatabang lang. Toyo pati suka, walang nangyayari. But, if you react certain chemicals, some products can actually be formed. Okay? So, it just needs to follow one of these three criteria. Okay? So, yan. So, yan. Okay, so ngayon pa lang I am giving you a disclaimer. Kapit muna because medyo technical yung aking mga sasabihin sa next slides na. However, I will give you more examples so that you can grasp the concept. Okay? So for now, I will just lay out everything and then later on, let's exercise the ideas para ma-retain. Okay? So yun. Again, medyo technical muna tayo. Then later on, I will proceed with the examples. Okay? So let us start with the precipitation reaction. So this is one of the reactions in aqueous solution wherein you form solid products. Okay? Precipitates tawag doon. Okay? So again, A precipitation reaction, this occurs when your ions can pair to form insoluble compound. We call the insoluble compound the precipitate. Okay? And our precipitates, no, they are usually in solid or colloidal form. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, precipitation reactions, no, kapag pinaghalo mo yung dalawang liquid, bigla na lang may mamumuo na solid. Okay? So, just like here, no, yung white dito, that is just light reflection. Okay? Liwanag lang yan sa bombilya. However, look na. So, these are two clear liquids, magnesium sulfate, sodium hydroxide. But when you mix them, look at what happened. Naging cloudy siya, right? Okay. Why? Because precipitates are forming, insoluble compounds are forming. Okay? So, yeah. To give you some more example, wala kasi tayo sa school eh. So, wala akong mabigay na demo. May video nito sa laboratory. Panoorin nyo na lang. Okay? So, to give you an idea, precipitation reaction, Google tayo. Yan. So, yan. Papansin mo, for this picture here, we have clear liquids. Ito, pati ito. Pero pag pinaghalo mo sila, may yellow na mabubuo. Okay? And that is solid. You can actually scoop that out of the reaction. You can filter it out. Okay? So, yun yung ating precipitation reaction. When you mix two liquids na clear, pag pinaghalo mo sila, may mabubuong solid. Okay? Precipitation reaction, tawag doon. Okay. So, ito yung question ngayon. Okay? When will you know if a precipitate can be formed? Paano mo malalaman kung pwede mag-form ng precipitate? You have to memorize na yung ginamit ko, this table. Kahit di naman memorize na, you can print this out and save it in your your phone. Pwede naman i-print out nyo, tabi nyo sa desk nyo. Okay? So, this table here allows us to determine if precipitates can be formed. Okay? Okay? So, yun, sabi dyan. So, we must remember the solubility rules. Okay? If sinabi dito that we form insoluble compounds, it means precipitate yan. Otherwise, soluble yan. Okay? So, let's take a look at the solubility table. I will introduce you how to read this, how to interpret this. Okay? So, solubility rules for ionic compound. Nasa nito? Nasa textbook nyo to. Chapter 4. Ayan, so table 4. So, ano sabi dito? So, let's talk about this thing first. The usually soluble compounds. Okay? What are the compounds that are usually soluble? Okay? Sabi dito yung sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, ammonium. All group 1 metal and ammonium salts are soluble. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nun, regardless of kung anong atom sila nakakabit, they will always be soluble. Okay? They will not form precipitate. So, again, when your cations ay ito, they are always soluble, regardless kung sino yung anion nila. Next one, we have the nitrates. Ang sabi, nitrates are soluble. Ibig sabihin, regardless of the cation, nitrates will always be soluble. Whether that's iron 2 nitrate, iron 3 nitrate, chromium 3 nitrate, lead 4 nitrate, all of them will be soluble because nitrates are soluble. Okay? Let's talk about chlorides, bromides, and iodides. Sabi dito, all common chlorides, bromides, and iodides are soluble except when you pair them with silver. So silver, mercury 1, lead 2. Okay? So pag pinartner mo siya sa silver, mercury, and lead, dun siya nagiging insoluble. Okay? Again, let me interpret this ha. Sabi dito, these ions are usually soluble except when paired with silver, mercury, lead. Okay? So, kapag nakapartner sila dito sa metals na to, they are insoluble. Okay? Just like here in the picture, dito sa picture na to, the yellow thing there is lead iodide. Okay? PbI2. Because sabi natin kanina, kapag yung iodide nakapartner sa lead, insoluble yan. Magiging ganito yan. Magiging yellow precipitate yan. Okay? So, that's how you interpret this, ha? Pag sinabi except, tas andito ka sa part na to, ito, insoluble yan. Okay? So, yan. Let's proceed. Next one, sulfates. Sabi, sulfates are usually soluble except when paired with calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, these are the precipitates. Okay? Precipitates. Yan. Next one, acetate. Ang sabi, all acetates are soluble. So, ibig sabihin, regardless of the cation, it will always be soluble. Okay? So, again, that's how you interpret the first part of the table. So, sabihin niya ano yung mga soluble at ano yung except. No. Ano yung except? Except ganito, except ganyan. Okay? So, yan. Pag sinabi except dito sa part na to, it means that these compounds here are precipitates. Mamumuo yan. Okay? Yan. Now, let's go to the next part. This is the counterpart of this one, diba? So, ito soluble. This one, insoluble. Let's read. Phosphate. Ano sabi? Phosphates are insoluble. Okay. So, hindi talaga sila daw natutunaw sa tubig. Except those of ammonium and group 1 cation. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ang phosphate, insoluble talaga sila. Pero, if you pair them with ammonium and group 1 metals, they can be soluble. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nun, sodium phosphate is soluble, kasi group 1 yan, but calcium phosphate is insoluble. Okay? Kasi wala siya sa except eh. Ang calcium, remember, group 2 yun. Okay? So, hindi siya group 1. So, ibig sabihin, insoluble siya. Okay? So, by now, you should know the groups of your elements in the periodic table, ha? Okay. Aluminum phosphate, is it soluble or not? It is insoluble. Kasi group 3 siya. Kailan daw uli nagiging soluble ang phosphate? If may group 1 or ammonium. Okay? So, yan. So, that's the first rule for the insolubles. Phosphates are insoluble except when it is paired with ammonium and group 1 cation. Next one, we have the carbonates. Okay. Sabi dito, carbonates are insoluble except those of ammonium and group 1 cations. So, similar with the phosphate. Okay. So, sodium carbonate, is it soluble? Yes, kasi sodium is group 1. And according to this table, that is an exception to the rule. Insoluble talaga siya, but since sodium is group 1, then it is soluble. Okay? Sodium carbonate is soluble. How about calcium carbonate? Is it soluble or not? Calcium carbonate, it is insoluble. Okay? Ito yung component ng ating stalactites, stalagmites sa kuweba. Okay? Calcium carbonate yan lahat. Okay? And as you can see, those minerals doesn't dissolve in water because calcium carbonate is insoluble because calcium is not a group 1 metal. Group 2 kasi siya. Okay? So, yan. Next one, we have hydroxides. So, ang sabi, hydroxides are insoluble except when it is paired with ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, and calcium. Okay? So, yan. So, insoluble talaga sila unless you pair them with ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. So, ibig sabihin nun, sodium hydroxide is soluble because sodium is group 1 metal. But, iron 3 hydroxide will be insoluble because apparently, wala dito si iron 3 sa exception sa rule. Ang meron lang na except ay ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. Siguro you might be thinking, paano sir yung slightly soluble? When we say slightly, just disregard the word slightly. Make it fully soluble na lang, okay? We will learn more of that sa Anachem, okay? So more of those things in Anachem na. And then lastly, thank you Lord. Okay, so lastly, we have the sulfides. So sabi dito, sulfides are insoluble except ammonium, group 1, group 2, magnesium, calcium, barium. Yun yung cation. Okay? So again, sulfides are generally insoluble unless you pair them with ammonium, group 1, group 2 metals. Okay? So yun yung ating solubility rules. No? Do you have to remember this? No? Kung gusto niyo mas mabilis mag-solve, yes. However, it's okay for me if you write it in your index card or i-print nyo to. That's fine. Okay? As long as everyone knows how to interpret this. Okay? So basically, the table is composed of two parts. No? The soluble region and the insoluble region. Okay? So just be careful when reading the except. Okay? Yung mga conditions nila. Okay? So yan. So let's go back here. Paano nasabi that MgOH2 is precipitate? Malalaman mo if it is a precipitate if you have a letter S beside it. Okay? So that letter S means na yan ay solid precipitate. Pwede ma-filter out. Ngayon, the question is, paano natin nasabi na iyan ay precipitate? So again, the answer to that is here in your solubility rules. Okay? So, paano gagawin? Kunwari, hindi ko binigay yan. Kunwari, wala tayong binigay na ganito. Kunwari, ito lang binigay ko sa inyo. How will you know the products? Ganito lang. Okay? So, there are some steps that we can do in order to determine the products of the reaction. So, first thing first, remember that our ionic compounds dissolve in water. Ibig sabihin ko doon, yung reactant mo, you split them into ions. Okay? So, yun yung una mong gagawin. Yung ionic compounds mo, you split them into ions because they dissolve in water. So, ibig sabihin, this MgSO4 can be written as Mg2+, SO4 negative 2. NaOH can also be written as Na+, OH minus. Okay? Why? Because, again, sabi ko earlier, that these ionic compounds dissolve in water via dissociation or ionization process. Okay? So, they dissolve in water. Okay? So, yun yung first mong gagawin. To convert your reactants into ions. What's next? Once you have your ions, okay, let me write it here. Okay. Once you have your ions, you switch partners. Okay, double displacement reaction din. You switch their partners. So ito ay partner mo doon. Ito ay partner mo doon. Okay? Then look at the solubility table if may sinabi siya about those partners, no? Are they soluble? Are they not? The solubility table can answer that, okay? So again, ano yung steps? You dissociate your reactants into ions, then you swap the partners. Okay? So kanina, Mg is paired with sulfate. Now, you should pair it with OH. Okay? So kanina, ayan. Ngayon, pagsamahin natin sila. Ito na yung new pair mo. And then, ito na yung new pair mo rin. Okay? We swapped out the partner. So, si Mg, ipapartner mo kay OH. Si sulfate, ipapartner mo kay sodium. Okay? And then, after that, you check your solubility table if they are soluble or not. Okay, so let me just zoom in again. Okay, so let's check sodium and sulfate pair. Okay, may sinabi ba about them? Basahin natin. Sodium, ayan, kita mo, sodium. Ano sabi dyan? They are always soluble. Sulfate, ano sabi? Soluble din. Except calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Eh, meron tayo sodium eh. Okay? So that means this is soluble. Okay? Sabi dito, sodium is soluble, sulfate is soluble kapag sodium yung kasama. Kailan magiging insoluble yung sulfate? Pag kasama niya si calcium, strontium, barium, and lead. Okay? So that means this pair, they are soluble. Okay? So I have to note that. Okay? So sulat ko, soluble. Okay? So that's how you do it now. Next one, we have magnesium and hydroxide. Let's take a look at this table. Asan kaya yung magnesium? Walang sinabi. Hydroxide, ayun, naka-circle. Okay? Sabi dito, for hydroxides are insoluble except those of ammonium and group 1. Strontium, barium, and calcium. Ano meron tayo? Magnesium. Pasok ba yung magnesium sa except? Okay? Pasok ba siya doon sa except dito? Hindi, di ba? Because ang kasama doon sa exclusion ay ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, and calcium. Apparently, walang magnesium. So, ano meaning nun? The hydroxide form is insoluble. Okay? So, this one will be insoluble because this thing, hindi siya kasama doon sa except. Okay, doon sa except and ammonium, group 1, so on and so forth. Okay. So, that means this pair here is insoluble. Okay. So, yan. So, since you have insoluble product, you can just do the crisscrossing. Okay. So, you crisscross that, Mg2 plus, OH minus. So, yung 2 na to, mapupunta sa labas ng OH. Yung 1, mapupunta doon. So, the formula of the insoluble product is MgOH2. And you have to indicate that that is precipitate by using letter S. Ilalagay mo yan dito. That indicates that this is a precipitate. Okay. By the way, nag-shortcut ako madalas, no? When you say PPT sa sinusulat ko, it means precipitate. Okay? So, yan. So, yan. Pag nakita nyo PPT, precipitate yan. Okay. So, again, what are the steps in order for us to determine if we will have a precipitate? Ano yung unang gagawin? Split your reactants into ions. Swap their partners. Next is to look for the solubility rules na kung may sinabi ba if they are soluble or not. Okay? If they are able to form insoluble products, you write letter S. Okay? Indicating that that is a precipitate. Okay? And if you do that in the laboratory, ito talaga yung magiging itsura niyan. Okay? So magbabago talaga yung kulay niyan. Okay? May mamumuo talaga. Okay? So yan, you have to indicate that. Okay? So ayan. In summary, you have your magnesium, you have magnesium sulfate, you have sodium hydroxide. Just do the double displacement reaction. Okay? And then by determining the by just looking at the solubility rules, we knew that this compound here is precipitate. Okay? So if it is a precipitate, you write letter S. Okay? And of course, you have to balance this. However, in our discussion today, hindi naman siya masyadong important na. Okay? So yung balancing that will be discussed in your laboratory. Okay? That is how we know when a precipitate can form. Okay? Tingin lang kayo dito sa solubility rules. So there are many ways in representing our precipitation reaction. You can use molecular equation, wherein lahat nakasulat in their chemical formula. Okay? So just like what we did earlier, sila sila, they are combined. We call them molecular equation. When we say ionic equation naman, basically, all the aqueous species, ito, pati ayon, all the aqueous species needs to be written out in terms of their ions. Okay? So what I mean by that is yung MgSO4, gawin mo siyang Mg2 plus SO4 minus. Sodium hydroxide, gawin mo siyang Na plus OH minus. Na2SO4, ano gagawin mo dyan? Na plus SO4 negative 2. Okay? So all the aqueous species are converted into their corresponding ions. Pero, yung precipitate, hindi mo siya hihiwalay. Okay? Because that is a solid. So again, keep in mind, only aqueous species, no, yun yung kailangan mo isulat in terms of their ions, not the solids. Okay? So ano mangyayari? So in our ionic equation, we can observe that some terms can be cancelled out. Okay? So, bakit sila pwede i-cancel? Because they appear on the left and on the right side of the equation. Okay? So again, we disregard this. Disregard mo yan. Okay? So looking at the equation here below, the ionic equation, ano mga pwede natin i-cancel? Yung mga nag-appear on the left and on the right, no, na ions. So this is sodium. Ano pa? This is sulfate. Ayun. So yung mga ions that appear on the left and on the right can be cancelled out. Siguro you might be asking, Sir, paano yung MgOH2? Hindi mo ika-cancel yan because again, yung ating solid, you don't split them into ions. So therefore, you can cancel them out. Okay? When you cancel out the ions that appear on the left and on the right, such as sulfate and sodium, pag kinancel mo sila, ano matitira? Mg and OH, forming MgOH2. This is what we call the net ionic equation. Yan ang net ionic equation where we just show the precipitation reaction, the involved species in the precipitation reaction. Ano tawag sa mga kinancel out? Tawag natin sa kanila ay spectator ions. Okay? So spectator ions are ions that do not participate in the precipitation reaction. So kumbaga nakatingin lang sila, mga marites lang sila. Nakatingin lang sila sa kanilang mag-react. Okay? So again, anong mga representation natin? Molecular, you write your ionic compounds completely. For ionic equation, lahat ng aqueous you convert them into ions except for the precipitate. And then if you cancel out similar terms, you will come up with your net ionic equation. Yung na-cancel mo, tawag doon ay spectator ions. So spectator ions are ions that do not participate in the precipitation reaction. Okay? Ang dami nangyari, no? Okay. So, we have several examples naman. Don't worry. Okay? So, I will answer some of this, no? To give you an idea, no? Kung paano magkakaalaman kung precipitate yan or not. Okay? So, to further enhance your skills. I know this is new for most of you, but this is important. Okay? Okay, so anyway. So, let's try. Okay, so I will answer the first 3 items. Then kayo na bahala sa iba. Okay? I will answer the first 3 items, kayo na bahala sa iba. Ano sabi dito? Predict if a precipitate will form, write the molecular equation and the net ionic equation. Okay. So marami tayong gagawin. Predict kung may precipitate, determine the molecular equation and the net ionic equation. Okay, so let's do that. So let's begin. Number 1. We have sodium sulfate. and ano daw? Barium chloride. Okay? So, ano yung step natin na? Okay? So, ako gagawin ko step by step, ha? So, you can follow. Step 1, sabi ko kanina, yan, dissociate ions first. Okay? So, this is the first step. You have to dissociate your reactants. Okay? So, ano yung mga ions na pwede mo mabuo dito? Okay, so ano yung mga ions na pwede mo magawa? So, for sodium sulfate, that is Na+, SO4, -2. Okay, so by now, you should know how to do reverse crisscross, ha? Okay. So, yan. So, for this one, barium chloride, reverse crisscross, you will get barium 2 plus Cl minus. Okay, so those are the ions we can get out of our ionic compounds. Ang sunod na step? Step 2, swap partners. So, ano yung original partner? Sodium and sulfate. Ano na yung bagong partner niya? Na and Cl. Tapos, barium and sulfate. Okay? So, once na maswap mo na yung partner nila, so again, just swap them. Okay? So, pag naswap mo na sila, ano yung next step? Check for solubility rules. Dugtong ko na dito. Okay? So, once you are able to swap the partners, the next thing you're going to do is to check the solubility rules. Okay? So, ako kabisado ko na yan eh. Ilang taon ko na ginagawa ito eh. Pero, in your case, so gagamit tayo nito. Okay? So, let me just zoom in para malaki yung ating letters. Okay? So, let us look for sodium and chlorine. May sinabi ba sa table? Tignan natin. Zoom in tayo, zoom in. Sodium and chlorine. Ay, sulat ko na lang dito sa taas. Okay? So, ayan. Let me zoom in. Okay. So, let's check if itong new pair natin, ng ating mga bagong partners, if they will form precipitate na. So, let's take a look at sodium and chlorine. Okay. Sabi, usually soluble. Ayan, sodium ang sabi. Soluble sila regardless of the anion. But Cl, soluble sila. Kailan nagiging insoluble ang Cl? When it is paired with Ag, Hg, and lead. This is not Ag. This is not Hg. This is also not lead. Okay? Ibig sabihin, this compound here is soluble. And obviously, asin yan eh. Tutunaw talaga yan. So, soluble to. Okay? So, ganun. So, that is soluble. How about barium and sulfate? Tingin tayo sa table. May sinabi ba? Ayan, sulfate. Sabi, most sulfates are soluble except calcium, strontium, barium. Ayun. Nakita natin that barium forms insoluble compound with sulfate. Bakit? Ano sabi? Soluble kasi sa sulfate except when you pair it with calcium, strontium, barium, and lead. Meaning ng except, it is no longer soluble when you pair it with these cations. And apparently, barium is included there. So it means that barium sulfate is a precipitate. Okay? And so barium sulfate is a precipitate. Okay, so I hope we're clear with that. Pag may clarification, chat nyo lang. Okay? Kasi alam ko medyo mahirap talaga to. So again, according to the rules of the solubility table, ito ay soluble This one forms precipitate. Okay? Very easy. Kung kabisado nyo table, mas madali. Pag hindi kabisado table, okay lang, i-print out nyo na lang. Okay? So, yun. That's the first two steps. No? So, we are able to determine that when we dissolve this, a precipitate can be formed. Okay, step 3 tayo. What's our step 3? Write the molecular formula. Okay? So, ano yung reactant mo? Obviously, your reactants are sodium and sodium sulfate and barium chloride. What are your products? Just simply change the partners and do the reverse crisscross. So you will get NaCl and barium sulfate. Okay, so do the reverse crisscross lang. Ito, punta doon, ito, punta doon, ito, punta doon, ito, punta doon. Okay? But if the subscripts are the same, in the case of barium and sulfates, that's 2 and 2, you can just simply remove those subscripts. Okay? So, yan. So, I know you know this already. Marunong na tayo mag-write ng formulas. Okay? May mga naka-perfect naman kasi sa inyo. So, yan. So that is the molecular formula. And take note that this is unbalanced pa. Okay? So in your laboratory, you will learn the balancing there. Okay? So sige. Ayan. Naantok ako. Ayan na. Step 4. Hinahanap sa atin yung net ionic equation. So how are you going to write the net ionic equation? Sorry, I forgot to write S. S meaning precipitate, di ba? So, paano mo isusulat yung net ionic equation dito? Just as I said earlier, all the ionic compounds need to be written in terms of their ions except for the precipitate. Okay? So, itong solid, wag mo na pakialaman yan. But the rest, you split them into ions. Okay? Split mo uli sila. So, ito, ano yung ions natin dito? We have Na+, SO4, negative 2. Ano ions natin dito? Barium 2+, Cl-, right on arrow. What are the ions we can get from this? Na+, Cl-, and again, kapag solid yan, wag mo na pakilaman. Just copy it. Okay? And then what's next? No? Once you are able to write these ions, you can start canceling out similar terms. Ano yung mga similar terms? Sodium, meron dito, meron doon. Chloride, meron dito, meron doon. Okay? So again, yung kinancel natin, tawag natin doon ay spectator ions. So spectator ions, they are the ions that are just around, not doing anything, just observing. Okay, so yan. Okay, so the net ionic equation will be kung ano yung natira. So Ba2+, SO4 minus 2, BaSO4. And this is our net ionic equation. And I forgot to write S. Again, do not forget to write the S. Okay? Yung EQ kahit di mo na isulat, pero yung S, kailangan talaga isulat yan. Okay? So, yan. So, those are the steps. Again, dissociate the ions, swap the partners, check for the solubility rules. And then, pag may nakita kang precipitate, you continue, write the molecular formula, you do the crisscross for your new partners. Then, in order for you to get the net ionic equation, rewrite everything again in terms of the ions, except for the precipitate. Then, cancel out similar terms, the spectator ions, and then you are now left with your net ionic equation. Very simple, okay? But again, I know that this is new to most of you. So, you really need more time, no more practice. So, magsasagot pa ako ng isa pa. Okay? You may take a screenshot of this slide. Okay? And then I will pull out the next question. Okay? Okay? So, kunin ko yung next question. Calcium nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Okay? So, proceed na ako sa next. Okay, screenshot kayo dyan or balikan nyo na lang sa recording. I will proceed with the next one. The next one is calcium, copper. Okay, so ito yung next one natin. So, copper 2 nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Okay, so now, ano steps? Okay, let's determine if we can form precipitates here. Step 1, dissociate ions. Okay, so let's do that. By now, you should know how to dissociate ions. Kasi kung hindi, madadala nyo yan until Anachem. Sa Anachem, puro ganito ginagawa. Okay. But with more math. Okay. Kaya yan, you really have to be, kailangan itong mga bagay na to, you really have to master these things now. So that when you reach Anachem, math na lang yung problema niya. Okay. So yan. So you do the reverse crisscross. This will go here, that will go there. You have your Cu2 plus, NO3 minus. For this one, you have your NH4 and SO4 negative 2. Okay. Next step. Step 2, swap partners. Solubility rule. Okay, so let us swap partner. This will be paired there. This thing, pair natin doon. Okay. So, ayan. Swap partners. Ano na yung partner ko? Nawala ako. Nag-ano na naman ako. Nawala. Okay. So, copper and then sulfate. And then we have ammonium. And we have nitrate. Okay. So, now, we have this thing na na-swap na natin yung partners. Ano susunod na gagawin? Look into the solubility rules. Okay? So, let's go back to the previous slide. Ayan. So, palitan na natin to. See? Palitan natin yan. Ano yun? Nawala na naman. Copper, then sulfate. Ammonium and nitrate. Okay, so these are our new partners. Let's check the solubility rules if soluble sila or not. Okay, so let's read. Basa. Let's try ammonium nitrate muna. Bakit? Ano sabi dito? Ammonium, soluble. Nitrate, soluble. So, no-brainer. This is already soluble na. Okay? Ayan, kitang-kita. Ammonium is soluble. Nitrate is soluble. So, this thing here is soluble. Okay? So, that thing is soluble. How about the other one? About copper 2 and sulfate. Basahin natin. Ayan sulfate. Sabi, Most sulfates are soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, lead. The metal we have is copper. So, ibig sabihin, uh, it is not excluded in this rule, no? So, soluble daw siya. Sino ba yung mga metals that are excluded sa rule? Calcium, strontium, barium, and lead. Okay? So, kapag sila yung kapartner ng sulfate, they are precipitates. However, what we have here is copper, which is not written there. Ibig sabihin, this is soluble. Okay? Parehas silang soluble. Okay? So, yan. So, they are both soluble. Okay? So, I hope na nasundan nyo yan. Okay? So, bakit uli siya naging soluble? Again. Bakit naging soluble? Kasi sabi dito, for the sulfate, they are insoluble. They are soluble except when paired with calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Copper meron tayo eh. Hindi naman siya calcium, hindi naman siya strontium, hindi siya barium, hindi siya lead. Ibig sabihin, soluble siya. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, all our two new pairs are soluble. Okay? So, anong mangyayari kapag parehas soluble, sir? Anong mangyayari dyan? Pag parehas yan soluble, no reaction yan. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na pinaghalo mo na, wala pa rin nangyayari. Okay? Parang toyo at ano lang to, toyo at suka. Na when you combine them, walang nangyayari. Masarap lang siyang sausawan, pero you don't see any precipitates forming, wala kang nakikita na bumubula, no? Yes. So, kapag soluble, no precipitates are formed. So, paano mo isusulat yun dito? Okay. So, if you have two soluble products, no? If no precipitates are formed, okay, pag nilagay ko PPT, precipitate yan, hindi yung PowerPoint. So, if you have no precipitates formed, ano meron? No reaction ang isusulat mo. Okay? No reaction. Walang nangyari. Okay? Natunaw lang sila lahat. Okay? So, I will write this as ganito. Okay? So, ganun lang. Ganyan lang kasimple. So, again, when we say no reaction, ibig sabihin nun, no precipitates yung nabuo. Okay? Walang precipitate na nabuo. Yan. Pero kapag may precipitate na nabuo, then you have to proceed to the next two steps. You have to write the molecular formula. You have to write the net ionic equation. But again, if wala kang precipitate na nabuo, no reaction isusulat mo dun. Okay? Ang ganun ha. Keep that in mind. Kapag lahat soluble, no reaction. Kapag may isang insoluble, continue. You write the molecular formula and the net ionic equation. Paano sir, kapag dalawa yung insoluble? Pwede rin. Okay. So as long as may insoluble ka mabubuo, no, yun, you continue until the end. So tuloy-tuloy lang yung pagsagot until step 4. Pero again, kapag soluble sila parehas, tigil ka na. Kasi no reaction na yun. Pag ginawa mo yung spectator ions na to, lahat sila magka-cancel out. Basically, there is no reaction talaga. Okay? So, yan. For the sake of time, I will no longer answer number 3, but I will give you an idea kung ano sagot dyan. So, kasi ilang minutes na lang, malapit na tayo matapos. So, for the sake of time, I will skip number 3. Ang sagot dito is that meron tayong precipitate na mabubuo. Alamin nyo na lang paano mo malalaman na ito yung nabuo. Okay, so this is the precipitate that will be formed in number 3. For number 4, no reaction. Alamin nyo bakit? And then for the last one, we have precipitate. No? Okay, so that is our precipitate for number 5. Okay. So again, it is your task to determine na lang paano nangyari yan. Okay. Again, lahat naman may steps just as I shown you earlier. Okay, so please take a screenshot na to. Okay. So ito kasi yung steps talaga in determining the if meron tayong precipitates or wala. If may precipitate, you continue. Write the molecular formula. Write the net ionic equation. Okay? Pero, ito, you also take a screenshot dito. Okay? So, pero kapag yan ay parehas soluble, wag mo na ituloy. Kasi no reaction yan eh. Okay? Kaya yung sinasabi na kahit paghalu-haluin mo, anong gawin mo, walang mangyayari dyan. Okay? So, they are not reacting with one another. What just happened is that they got dissolved. Natunaw lang sila. Yun. So, ganun. So, ganun lang yung precipitation reaction. Okay? So, I hope we're clear with that. No? If you have questions, let me know lang. Okay? Kasi, I know not all of you are aware of this, especially those who came from non-stem strands, no? Ating mga, ABM, UMS, no? Gas, no? Okay. But anyway, as long as you understand this naman, no? Madali na lang. Okay? Madali na lang yung chem. Okay? So, yan. So, that's all for the precipitation reaction. Next one. What else do we have here? So, kanina, sabi natin, a reaction will take place when we have ions that can combine to form insoluble substances. We call that the precipitates. And then, next one, sinabi natin that ito na yung discuss natin na last for this day. There are ions that can neutralize each other, forming neutral substances. We call that the acid-base reaction. Okay? So, let's talk about acid-base reaction. So, in your nomenclature last week, last 2 weeks, ano meron sa nomenclature natin? We know that acids, the cation for acids, H plus yan. And the anion for bases ay OH. What will happen when you mix acid and base? They neutralize. Alam mo nyo to, di ba? Okay? Why? Because yung acids natin, may H plus sila, yung ating base may OH sila. When you combine them, you're actually forming water. Ayun, no? So, H plus OH, magpo-form ng water. And we know that water is neutral. Therefore, we call it neutralization reaction. Okay? Neutralization reaction. Kasi yung acid and base, nagka-cancel out sila to form a neutral compound, which is water. Okay? So, in general, this is the equation, acid plus base, water plus salt. Okay? So, ganun. Ano yung salt? Ito yung natirang ions. No? Okay? It could be the cation of the base, the anion of the acid. Okay? So, ganun. So, let's try. Okay, so, paano natin malalaman? Okay, so, for example, I react HCl with NaO. This is just double displacement reaction. First thing you have to do is to split them into their corresponding ions. So, split this into the cation and the anion, H plus, Cl minus. Split this thing again in the two cations, the two ions, Na plus, OH minus. Then, anong gagawin mo? Swap the partners. Swap. Okay, yan. And then yung H plus, OH minus, you form water, and the remaining will form the salt. Okay? So, ganun lang. Very easy. So, and again, split the ions and then swap the partners. Ganyan, you're done. Okay, just combine the two final products. Ayan. Yan. So, let's try this one. Predict the product and determine if there will be precipitates. No? Sometimes, in acid-base reaction, a precipitate can be formed. No? Sometimes. Pero it's not necessary naman to form precipitates. No? Kung kanina sa precipitation reaction, it is very important to know na may precipitate ka. In the acid-base reaction, we don't care actually about the precipitates, no? We just care about H plus and OH combining to form water. Okay? But there are cases na pwede sila din mag-form ng precipitate. Okay? Pwede rin mag-form ng precipitate. I will just answer the two items here. Okay? So, two items ang sagutan ko. Kayo na uli bahala sa iba. Bigay ko yung sagot. Hindi, kayo na, kayo na bahala dyan. Kaya nyo na yan. Kasi double displacement lang tayo. Okay. So, let's do the separation of ions. Okay. Ion, H3. What are the ions we can get out of this? We have copper 3 plus, OH minus, about this one. And this is H plus, and PO4 minus 3. And then you swap partner. Sila na mag-partner, sila na mag-partner. So overall, that's copper 3 hydroxide plus phosphoric acid producing on unnamed partners. HOH, we can write it as H2O. CuPO4, again, look at the exponents, look at the charges, they are the same. So if the charges are the same, you can just simply discard them. Okay? Kasi kapag nag-crisscross ka niyan, for example, this one, if you do the crisscross process, this 3 will go outside here, this 3 will go down here. And again, just as I said earlier, in the previous chapters, oopsie, sorry. As I said in the previous chapter, if the same lang yung kanilang subscript, you can just simply erase that. You can just simply erase that. Okay? So, yan. So, yan yung ating product in the acid-base reaction. The next question here is that we have to know if there are precipitates na mabubuo. Okay, sige. So, balik ulit tayo sa sa ating table. Balik ulit tayo dito. Huwag nyo na i-check yung water. Yun nga yung ginagamit pantunaw eh. You just check the copper phosphate. Is this soluble? Let's see. Tignan natin yung rule. Copper 3 phosphate. Tingin sa rule. Walang sinabi about phosphate, walang sinabi about copper. Baba tayo. Ayun, phosphate. Ano sabi sa phosphate? Phosphates are insoluble except those of ammonium and group 1. Is copper ammonium ion? No. Is copper group 1 metal? No. So therefore, it is a precipitate. Okay? So ganun yung logic dito. So, insoluble siya unless you pair it with ammonium and group 1. Because when you pair it with ammonium and group 1, they will be soluble. Pero, we have copper, which is obviously not ammonium and not a group 1 metal. So, sabihin, this one is a precipitate. Okay? So, again, the idea is that in doing acid-base reaction, there are times that we can also form precipitate. So, we have to write letter S. How about water? Okay. Kapag water yan, you write it as L. L, ibig sabihin, liquid. Okay. So, si water, nilalagyan talaga ng L yan. And then, ito, aqueous yan, AQ. But you don't have to write it naman. Okay. So, again, in acid-base reaction, there are times that you can form precipitates. Okay. And hindi naman necessary yun. Okay. Pwede mangyari lang yung precipitation. But the more important reaction in acid-base reaction is the combination of H plus and OH to form water. Okay? So, you should always form water. Okay? Otherwise, may mali. Okay? Last one. Bago tayo mag-dismiss because my throat is aching. dahil sa pagsasalita for how many days na. So let's split them into ions, do the reverse crisscross. This will go there, that will go there. You know that already, so yeah. And then here, H plus, NO3 minus. And then, what's next? Swap out the pairs. Swap, swap. Okay, so let's write the overall reaction. HNO3, aluminum hydroxide. We will have aluminum nitrate. Keep in mind that I am doing the crisscross na sa isip, ha. So, kailangan kaya nyo na yan sa isip. Isang tingin lang, alam nyo na yung crisscrossing. Okay? Anyway, you still have plenty of time to work on that naman. Okay? So now, these are our products. Again, kapag water, you write letter L. That's a liquid. How about aluminum nitrate? Natingin tayo sa table. Aluminum nitrate, is it soluble, insoluble? Actually, kahit hindi ko na isulat. Bakit? Tignan nyo yung table. Ano sabi about nitrates? Sabi dyan, nitrates are soluble. Okay? So, regardless of the cation, it will always be soluble. Okay? So, yan. Okay, so wala tayong precipitate na mabubuo, but we are able to form water. Okay, so those are the answers for the 2 questions, and then for the rest of the items, no, kayo na bahala sagot niyan, okay? And to give you a hint, no, for number 3, we will have a precipitate. For number 4, meron din tayong precipitate. And then for number 5, we have no precipitate. Okay, so it's up to you to identify ano yung mga yan. Okay? So, that ends our discussion. Okay. So, I hope everything's clear. Do you have any question? Next meeting na yung last, ha? Okay. So, next meeting na to kasi super haba na ito eh. Okay. So, yan. Anyway, so, if you happen to have any question, just let me know, ha? Okay, so, okay naman na tayo. So, is this new to you? Okay, ito, survey na to. I will end the recording na. So, is this